Hello, Lizzie here, and today I'm going to show you set one of our multifunction dies. These are absolutely awesome. They're going to make you 3 projects, and I bet anything you like, you'll make so many more. So when we start looking at them, we've got the fold over clutch bag, which is this one here, has a popper on, it has a zipper on as well. So maybe a bit of a challenge, but these are absolutely super easy, very achievable. The second one is the jewellery case, which is this one here. And if I open it up, you'll be able to see it's got all sorts of compartments going on and little tabs to put your rings on, and there's a little pocket there. So that can be made from this set. And the last one on the front here is the travel wallet, and that's this one here, and that's what we're going to make today. And this has probably got the most amount of pockets and zips going on completely. So you've got pockets here for your cards, you've got a pocket here maybe for your loose change, maybe a ticket for something, you've got a zipper pouch here for something that's valuable, maybe you could put your jewellery in there as well. You've got another pocket here. It's full of pockets. There's a little one here to put your passport in, and it all folds over and you get a little popper there to actually clip it together and keep it really safe. Now, the thing about all of these projects are that the dies, I'm going to show you the back of my packaging, the dies are all marked out there, and they're kind of multi-use. So not only is this a multi-function set of dies, but also they've got different uses. So for instance, the biggest die is the main panel and the large inner pocket. So they're kind of multi-use, which I think is absolutely awesome. So everything is labelled on there. So when you get the instructions and it says to you, let's have a look, pick one out at random, zip pocket, 8 inches, you need 2 outer fabric, 2 contrasting fabric, 2 interfacing. It tells you which actual die to use. So if we look at the die set here, that middle one, that's sort of second size, bigger, smaller than the large one, it does actually say zip pocket on there. So everything is labelled, everything is good to go. So the first thing I really should do is die cut everything. I've got everything laid out in front of me, and this is what you're going to do. You're going to get all your pieces all in order with regards to the instructions, and it makes it super easy, doesn't it? So I'm going to just move everything exactly how I've got it on my table. Some I've already pre-cut just to save a little bit of time. So some are pre-cut, but some aren't, because I think you need to see how these work. Now, some of them, like the one I'm going to use now, which is the largest die, this big one here, it's got multiple uses. Now, I'm going to cut these in 2 sections, or two passes, if you like. Now, if you want to, you could get your low-tack tape and make sure that is perfectly placed on there so it doesn't wriggle. The sandwich combination is like it always is for multimedia dies from us. So it's the clear plate, the metal plate, your dye and fabric, the opaque plates and the clear plate. So it's the same combination as we always use. And of course, straight through the Gemini machine. So this is our large inner pocket that I've cut. Tiny little bits of scrap, and I'm going to file those. So that's good to go. And now I need to cut the 2 outer pieces. Now, although it says outer pieces, one is the lining and one is actually the outer, it tells you about the interfacing, that you've got to put interfacing on the outer one. And you could put fleece on there as well if you wanted. I'll just line these up. There we go. I'm tight for space on this, but I'm sure it'll be fine. And like I say, if you're unsure whether they're going to wriggle as you could put them through, just put that little bit of tape on there just to hold them. And don't forget also, you can put more dies on your plate if you want to. I mean, this is quite a big die, so I'm just going to stick to this one. There we go. Just use my turntable to help me. There we go. Do you know, it's only 18 seconds. It feels like a lifetime sometimes. There we go. I wouldn't be without it. So there's our outer piece cut. Now, if you do happen just as like there, I didn't quite get the die right over the edge of the folds, don't worry about it. Just snip. I mean, it's not even a millimetre. That's probably a thread that I missed there. So that's that die used. I don't need to use that anymore. Those are my 2 outer pieces. Now I need to cut, well, which one shall I do? I've got a flap to cut and I've got the tabs to cut. So I'm going to do the tabs first because I want you to see how I fold the fabric with this particular die to make the zip pocket. So don't forget, when you're folding your fabric, do 1 layer at a time. So there's our first layer. That's the second layer. It's got a bit of interfacing on. You can see it's a scrappy piece. This is going to be a scrap buster. Now I'm using our fabulous Be Happy fabric, but you might have some already in your stash. Something that you've really been waiting to use. So I'm just going to pop that on there. Let's get that lined up. There we go. Oh, actually, I might as well do the flap as well. Let's save a bit of time. So just folding 1 at a time and layering them on top of each other. If you have the 2 layers together and then fold, you might find that they're slightly different sizes. So we'll just pop that on there as well. Make sure it doesn't wriggle. And we'll pop that through the Gemini as well. Just make sure you hold it nice and straight so those dies don't move. There we go. And actually, if it's halfway through and it's cut, then just send it back to yourself. So there are the flaps for the pocket. And again, I've just missed it by a thread. You just need to overhang that die just slightly. So those are cut. Let's not get confused. So there's the tab cut, and you can see because of the pressure of the Gemini, it's kept it folded, which is fine. I'll just keep it to one side, know exactly what it is. Again, I don't need that die anymore. So the one I need you to see is this one. The other 2 pieces that I've got cut, I've already done, just to save a bit of time. But this is where you need to fold the fabric. So on the instructions, it says we need 2 outer fabric, 2 contrasting fabric, 2 interfacing. So there's my fabric there. So I've got 2 pieces of the outer, 2 pieces of the lining, and I've already interfaced these with a regular iron-on sort of stiffener, if you like. So all I'm going to do now is fold these pieces, and I'll probably do 2 and then another 2. So I've got them roughly cut to size. So this is where it's a real good scrap buster. And you need just to lay, this is your cutting edge. And obviously these are cutting edges here. But obviously this is not going to cut any further than that. So you need to fold it to a particular line. But as long as you've got it cut to the approximate length, you really can't go wrong. So I'm just going to lay this over my fabric. Now this is where I am going to use my tape, just to hold that down. And then all we want to do, and I'm going to do it and then I'm going to show you. I'm going to show it to the other camera so you can see. Try and keep it straight. And then all I'm going to do is fold this under. Now, if the folded part goes over under the cut line, and I'll show you in a second, then you've got to realise it's going to cut. It's going to cut that line. So as long as your fabric is the right length, you'll be absolutely fine. So let's just tape that down. And then we can do it again. So if you have a look now, and it tells you in the instructions how to actually lay these all out, so you'll be able to see straight away if it's going to work or not. And also you can refer to this video any time, can't you? And see how I folded that. I mean, basically it tells you exactly what size it needs to be at the end. And it tells you exactly what die to use to achieve that. So it is dead easy, really. Right, here we go. So that's our first piece cut. And you will have bits of tape. That's fine. And there's such scrappy little pieces of fabric. So there's nothing to worry about. So look, this is the piece that we've cut here. So the actual dimension of this particular die, let me have a quick look, is 4.5 inches across. And in the instructions, it says it wants to be 8 inches long. So if I get my fabric, and I'll use my mat as a guide. It's just a little bit over 8, so I'll trim that, but I have got the most perfect cut. So if you're a little bit wary of rotary cutters, this system is perfect for you. So again, we're going to do exactly the same. So I'm placing my die over the top. I'm going to use tape because I find this really easy. And I'm going to position my die so it just covers that scrappy piece of fabric there. So I'm going to fold this tail under. So this piece here is going to go under, and then the cutting lines obviously finish here and here. And as long as I've got that fold, the other side of those cutting lines, and it will cut fine. So let's do that. I might want to lift it off. Now, shall we do that? So just lift it off. I'm going to double this up. And like I say, it says in the instructions that you want this to be 4.5 by 8. 4.5 is the width of the die, and it's 8 inches long. And if you've sort of moved it and it's measuring just over the 8, it's great. Just trim it off. It's fine. Easy. It's easier with the dies. That's all our cutting done. That's all our preparation done. We can now start stitching, which is the best bit. So I think I might put my Gemini away. So just peel that piece of tape off. And obviously, when you get your set of dies home, you'll have all the packaging that you can put your dies back onto and just keep them nice and flat. So there we are. Let's pop that out the way. Okay, so let's just make sure these are 8 inches. And if you're not sure, like I said, you can cut them. So just over a little bit, about 1/2 inch. So I'll take my rotary cutter and just trim that down. But what I've got is the most perfect die cut piece of fabric. Good to go. So again, let's get the right pieces. Let's just offer that up. Just over the 8 inches. So we'll give that a trim. There we go. Super. Right, now we're ready to start stitching. And there's a definite order of things. So the first thing you need to do is get your lining of your main piece, which is this one here. Let's get those bits out of the way. And this is really what you're going to be working quite a lot on. So this is our main piece here. Okay. And it's quite nice that you get the creases from the dies because that gives you that central line position. So this is the pocket that we cut just before. So all I'm going to do there is actually just stitch it around the 3 sides of this. I'm going to hold it up so you can see. So the folded edge goes towards the middle. And we're going to stitch it from here, down to here, down to here. So the next thing to do is to actually stitch the little pocket that goes on the front here. And this is our piece that we've just cut out before. It's 7 inches long and it's 4.5 inches wide. So all we're going to do is take the little pocket, put it right sides together. We're going to stitch along here, a little way into there, along there and up there, turn it through, and then we're going to attach it to the front of our large pocket here, and then we're going to stitch all the way around. So I'm going to bring my machine up now. And I'm using the lovely Stitch Pro. And this is a really lovely make, it really is. I mean, the instructions are so easy to follow. Now it says all the way through to use 1/4 inch seam allowance, but I wouldn't worry too much if it's something that you're concerned about. So a little back stitch. Now I've got my stitch length on about 3, only because I'm doing this quickly for you, but you would keep yours on 2.5. And then I'm just going to jump across to the other side. Back stitch again, because we're going to turn through there. And I keep forgetting I've got a needle down facility on this machine. And then up to the top, little back stitch to hold. Let's see. So trim your threads where you jumped across, trim your corners, take some of that bulk away. Now this little piece here, this little pocket, it's already been stabilised. So I have to say it makes it really a lot easier to, it holds its shape better when it's stabilised, and it makes a really neat job. So just use, I'm using the end of my scissors to poke this out. You might have a super duper pokey tool. A lot of people use chopsticks. You use whatever's comfortable for you. But you're just poking this out to get a nice sharp corner. And then don't forget we went round the corner at the bottom as well. I'm just poking that corner out as well. So you'll have a piece that looks like that. And obviously we need to fold that in and top stitch, but I'm going to do that at the same time when I put it onto my big inner pocket. So just going to place that over the top. Now don't forget you've got a seam allowance on this part. So if you have a think about, you need to come at least 1/4 inch in from both of those seams there. So when you place that on the pocket on there, just take that into consideration. So this bottom edge is going to go on the bottom part of the large pocket. You'll see when I do it. And of course all of this would benefit from an iron, but I'm going to finger press. So I'm going to start, let's bring that in a little bit. So I'm going to start at this top corner here. Let's get it up for you. This corner here, I'm going to go down, across and up, and that'll secure that pocket in place. And like I said, don't forget about that 1/4 inch seam allowance. So just make sure that you avoid that part of the pocket. Back stitch again. Just make sure it's all lined up beautifully. And lift your needle out, pivot and turn. I mean, if you wanted to, you could use some quilter's tape to hold this in place. Depends how brave you are. So again, let's just back stitch. There we go. Lovely, 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 lovely. Trim my threads. I should be good today. And although I throw all my threads on the floor, I do pick them up later. So there's our pocket in place there. So now this is all going to be attached to the bag itself. So that's the next thing we're going to do. So now the pocket's in place and you need that folded edge just here. Now that's ready to go onto our lining. So if you remember before I said we're going to stitch this 3 sides around. So that's what I'm going to do now. And this is just a stay stitch. So it's literally all the way around 3 sides and it's about 1/8 inch in from the raw edge. And that's just to hold it all in place. So, I mean, I think, don't get too hung up about this 1/8 inch business. Don't sort of measure it and draw it and get worried about it. It just needs to be a little bit away from where the seam allowance is going to be. And it's just literally holding all those layers of fabric together. So I'm really going close to the edge here. Now a lot of this is going to be done on the lining fabric. I'm not going to bother back stitching because it's going to be part of a seam. So a lot of this is going to be on this lining fabric that we're going to do. So you don't need to, the outside piece you can just put to one side. So there we are. So there's our big pocket in place and our little pocket in place. Isn't that fabric gorgeous? So let's have a look at the instructions and see what it tells us to do next. So you will get all these instructions. Don't think they're just for me. So we've done the pocket. So the next thing to do is the other little pocket on the other side, which is this one here. So all we're going to do is pop those pieces together, stitch around and pop it onto here to make a nice neat finish. Oh, it's this one here. It's the 4.5 by 7. So again, it's a similar sort of thing. So we're just going to fold this in half and we're going to stitch along here, again, stop here, jump across, start machining here, down to this corner here. And this is the one that's going to have the flap on it, so it's going to look really pretty. Again, 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you're just lifting up that presser foot and pivoting. And little back stitch, because we're going to turn this, a back stitch is always a good idea. Again, I'm doing about 3/4 inch from the corner. So back stitch those corners so they're nice and secure. And just trim my threads, although there's no need really. Just trim those corners off again, just so you get a nice sharp point. Trim your threads, being good. Trim those corners. I will pick those bits up later, I promise. Somebody once said, "Who picks up all your bits? Do you have some people to come in?" What? So, exactly as we did before. So this is just the same. So this is easy, isn't it? You can remember this. But this is the one that will have the popper on it with the flap, which we can do almost last. And again, that's how it looks. So we're just going to tuck that piece in, but we're going to top stitch it. Now, if you want to, use your quilter's tape just to hold all of that in place, or you could get your iron. Let me do that. Bring your iron in, give it a press, and just fold those seams under. And then it's easier for top stitching. And if you want to use clips or pins to hold that in place, by all means do that. So there's another little pocket. So that's going to go just here. So exactly what we did before. So that open end is going to be at the bottom. So again, you're just placing it onto your fabric. Be aware of that 1/4 inch again. So you're going to come up at least 1/4 inch and you'll come in from the side about, well, just over that 1/4 inch. But as you stitch the whole thing together, you will feel the edges of these pockets, so you'll know if you're too close. And you can make adjustments as you go. So we'll just top stitch this down. So again, do a back stitch because that's going to hold it really securely. So you're only doing the 3 sides. Loving this fabric. So again, keep my pieces lined up so I know which order to go in. And you'll do the same. So just trim your threads. I'm going to be really good and trim the back as well. Now you won't do this as fast as me, but hopefully you can follow, you can pause, you can rewind, you can always mute. Right, so the next thing, now I think we're going to make the flap. I'm just making sure because then it's the card pieces. Okay, we've got it. So the next thing is the little flap. I love this. I love anything that's cute. Now, because it's gone through the Gemini machine, it's put a crease right in the middle, which is sometimes really handy. But in this instance, I don't want that crease. So I'm just going to use my iron. Excuse me, licking my fingers. I'm just going to use my iron to get those out. Now, if you have the slightest sort of shadow of a crease, that's not a bad thing because we're going to put a popper on this right at the end. So those are our two flat pieces. So all we're going to do is right sides together. Well, this is plain fabric, so it doesn't really make a lot of difference. Stabilise one side, so that's the outer. So that's what's going to sit on the outer side of the pocket. So we're going to stitch all the way around the curve. Sometimes I stop here and here and then put the whole 1/4 inch in along, but I think this time I'm going to go in about 3/4 of an inch, just like I did before, and then just turn. So it's exactly the same as the pocket, except it's a curve. So again, do that back stitch. Yeah, I didn't start 3/4 of an inch in, so let's do that. About 1/4 inch seam allowance again, so just keep that in mind. And you might have a 1/4 inch foot. Now that's really useful. I'm going to back stitch that corner, only because it's quite a pressure point when you're turning through. It's quite a good thing to do. Try and keep your pieces straight. Come up to that corner again, pivot and turn. As I say, about 3/4 of an inch. I'm not measuring. Check and make sure that you've got everything covered, which I have. Trim your ends of your threads. There we go. And take some of that bulk away again. Now, because this is curved, you might want to clip into this. All I'm going to do is trim back. Pinking shears are absolutely brilliant for this part where you've got a curve. So either clip in or use your pinking shears. So again, we're just going to turn this through. So just take your time. Use something to push all those curves out as well as that corner. I'm using my scissors. These scissors have a rounded top to them. They're not pointy, they're not sharp. So I know they're safe. They're not going to go through my fabric. And they're safe to hold as well. So just, like I say, work that curve out, get that corner out as well. And there we are. So we've got the same as before. So this time I get my mat in again. And give that a nice little press. But also we're going to press the seam allowance in. And then we're just going to top stitch it to the lining. Like I say, get your corners worked out so they're lovely and pointy. And you might want to top stitch that as a sort of decoration. There's all sorts that you're going to be able to do. So that's our little flap made. So if I hold this up, there we go. It's going to go just there. Can you see? So I'm just going to top stitch that in place. Obviously, you want to be very careful you don't stitch the top of your pocket. So I'm going to just, well, it's probably about a 1/4 inch away from the top of my pocket. And I'm just going to top stitch across there. And this time, again, don't forget to back stitch. Let's get my threads out of the way. If you're not careful with your threads, you can end up with a bit of a bird's nest going on. So all the way along. This would actually look really nice with a top stitch. So do that before you stitch it onto your wallet. That's looking really nice. I think it's the fabric. So let's be good. Cut our ends. This doesn't happen very often, folks. There we go. Not too bad. Right, okay. We're nearly there. So the popper will go, let me hold it up. The popper will go here and obviously inside the pocket. But because we're going to use the snap fastener tool, we know that we can get inside that pocket and do all of that right at the very end. So I'm not too worried about that at all. The next thing we're going to do is the card holders. So you've got two pieces of fabric here. And they work out to be 4.5 by 4, just checking. And you need to fold those in half, just like we did before. So really it's the pocket again, except these are little rectangles. We're going to do exactly the same. So we're going to stitch a wee bit in, around and down, jump across and down, fold through, and then we're going to place them here on the wallet itself, on the lining. So you can see what I mean now about everything is done on the lining. That outer piece doesn't get a look in until at the very end. So again, start from the fold of your fabric, 1/4 inch thereabouts. We've allowed 1/4 inch on all the pattern pieces. There we go. Back stitch about 3/4 of an inch in. I'm leaping across to the other side. Back stitch, because you're going to turn through there. This is a repeat of everything that you've done so far. So while I've got the machine there, I'll do the other one. There we go, just make sure I'm folding the right pieces. So start from the fold again. Let me just double check. It's always good to double check and make sure they're the same. Look, they weren't. I didn't think they were. You get an eye for these things. Okay, let's do one more stitch. Back stitch, jump across. One more stitch. Okay, brilliant. So again, just the same as the pocket. Trim your ends, your threads, trim your corners, take some of that bulk away. It just really does help. But you know what? You could substitute felt for some of these things, and then you wouldn't need to worry about seam allowances. And great. Let's trim all those bits. Let's make sure that was through. Oh, I didn't think that I'd cut that bit. So again, we're just folding through or turning through. So you're going to get little rectangles, and they're going to sit almost on top of each other. So you're going to do the back one first and then the front one. And I'll show you what I mean in just a second. If I show you the one that we've already made, that might be easier. Right. There we go. So again, same as. So we just got to fold that seam allowance in, give that a little press because it does help. And I'll do that in a second. I haven't quite got that corner out. That'll annoy me if I don't. So let's just poke it out a bit more. And like I say, you'll take a bit more time than me. Push that through. Now don't try and keep up with me because I'm doing this super speedy. You do it at your own pace. You don't want to sit and watch me for 2 or 3 hours doing it in a slow way. Well, maybe you do. Ooh. Right, that's the second one. So same as, so I'll bring my little ironing mat in. It's so handy to have this right beside you. So if you've got the space, that's really useful. Little iron, little mat, you're good to go. So I'm just folding those top edges in where I left open. And it does make a difference because the fabric has been stabilised. It makes it really crispy. I love the bees on this. So there's the mat out of the way. So let me show you the one that we've made because that's easier to see. Oh, the flap's that way. So I did mine the other way. That's entirely up to you. So many choices. So that's the card holder there. Those 2 pockets. So you've got room for your credit cards or whatever you want to put in there. So the back one goes on first. and then the other one goes over the top. So hopefully you can see that. I quite like the pocket going the other way. Right, so let's just line those up. And of course you can pin these if you want to. I'll just get them fairly central. I'm getting them lined up so they're looking okay over the top of the pocket. And don't forget that 1/4 inch seam allowance again. So it's exactly the same. Let me hold it up. Hopefully I can show you. You're going to go down here, across and up, and leaving that top open, okay? That bit there. And then you're just repeating with the other one. But like I say, do this top one first. So make sure it's well in from the outside edge. Make sure it's not too near the other pocket. Back stitch to hold. And straight across the bottom. And it's like everything, isn't it? You'll make it your own. I mean, you don't have to use the snap fastener. You don't have to have any poppers on if you don't want to. You could use maybe a metal popper or press stud. Let's just trim those threads a little bit. Try and keep tidy. The back's not so tidy now. There we go. So there's one in place, okay? So the other one's going to go over the top. So line up those edges. I'll show you when I've done. And you're just literally going over the top. Make sure that the open edge is where you're going to stitch. You don't want that open edge at the top. Otherwise you'll have to hand stitch that, which is okay, but we might as well use the machine. So now you're going to go through quite a few layers. So be aware if your machine is okay to do that. I mean, it's just fabric and stabiliser, but you're still going through about 8 layers, thereabouts. Put a new needle in your machine. Go and do that now. I think this one needs a new needle. Again, just get that parallel to the other pocket and go right over the top and go a little bit further and then do a back stitch. And that way it's super secure, but not too much, otherwise it might look a little bit too many stitches, a little bulky. So again, trim. Oh, it's looking lovely. Okay, so there we are. One rebel flap. Okay, I made it mine. And then the card holder's just there, and you can see their lovely little pockets there and there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to make is the zippy pouch. That gets then machined onto your lining along here, but let's make the zippy pouch up first. So I need my zips on the roll. And what you have is you have 2 pieces of fabric, the outer, and 2 pieces of lining, like so. And we're going to pop the zip in now. So I've got my zips on a roll. Here they are. I've chosen a lovely green. So let's just get the length we want. Now I always go, I'm a bit of a rebel, I always go longer than the actual pouch. So I'm going to cut mine a little bit longer than my pouch itself. So about 1 inch either side. So about there. There is a reason. You'll see in a minute. So there we are. There's my zip. There we go. We get plenty on there. So I'm quite confident with that. So I want you to move your zip slider right to the end. Now what you could do is actually a little bit of a top tip. Get a staple gun, staple here, staple there. Okay, that means your slider won't go flying off and it's secure, because with zip on a roll, if you're not careful, that'll go. So put a little staple there, I haven't got mine with me, and a staple there, and that'll stop that slider from going. But keep it so it's right up the end there out of the way. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put our lining and our outer fabric on. And if you have a look, you can see it's way out of the way, which means I don't have to worry about that slider at all. And for the sake of a couple of inches of zip on a roll, it's fine. So I'll just change my foot to a zipper foot. And this is where you can, it depends on your machine as to whether you use your zipper foot or not. Some machines have a really tiny zipper foot. The one on the Stitch Pro is amazing because it's got a nice big wide flat bottom. So with a zip, you're going to put your lining fabric right side, so you're looking at your right side of your lining fabric. I'll turn this around in a second so you can see what I'm seeing. So right side of your lining fabric to the back of the zip. Then you've got the zip with the teeth facing me. I'll show you in a sec. And then you're getting your main fabric right side down. So that's your sandwich. So let me just hold that and show you. I'll make it so you can see it. So that's my sandwich, good to go now. So I've got my lining fabric right sides facing the back of the zip. Then I've got the front of the zip facing me and the right side of the outer fabric facing down. Okay, if you didn't quite catch that, just rewind that bit. And then all we're going to do is stitch all those 3 layers together in one go. Now I wouldn't bother back stitching with this because this is all going to be caught into a seam. Straight the way across. Now your zipper foot won't allow you to go over the teeth, so don't be worried about that. And because we cut this fabric with a die, if you remember right at the top, we were cutting the fabric with dies, which is the whole point of the system. This is a really gorgeous straight edge. So that's our first piece cut. In fact, let me show you here what that looks like. So there's my seam going all the way down. So what you'll have is something that looks like this. So there's my outer fabric folded back now, the front of my zip here, and the lining is beautifully attached, and that will go under. And we can top stitch that, so it's really lovely and neat. And I'll probably do that in just a second. But let's do the other side. So let's do it from this side so you can see. So what we need is the lining, and although this is plain fabric and it's the same both sides, it's the right side of the lining if it is patterned, and that goes behind your zip. The zip facing you, there's the teeth, and then the right side of your fabric facing down, and you're going to start stitching here. Just make sure all of this is parallel. And once you do it once, you'll be a pro. Again, I'm not going to worry about back stitching because A, I'm going to top stitch, but also it gets caught into a seam. I love making pouches, they're so easy. And again, because this was done on a die cutting machine, it's all beautifully cut. Every single piece is identical and it lines up beautifully. So keep your zipper foot on there because we're going to do the top stitch. So that's what you've got now. And there's your lining at the back. I might give that a press actually. There we go. So I'll give that a press. It does help with top stitching. Now at this moment, when you're thinking about this and you're getting it all neatly lined up, don't forget to move your slider of your zip. So I'll do this and then I'll show you. This is looking so lovely. There. I will top stitch just to finish that off. So that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like from the back. But what we need to do is get that slider moved. Now we are going to top stitch this. Now your zipper foot will easily now go past that slider. But if you're not sure, move it out again. move it out of the way. But I'll just top stitch this. And again, you can go as close as you like. And you know your zipper foot's going to do its magic. And then I'm just going to turn that and come down the other side. Now, because we pressed that, that made it really easy for me. So move your slider and just trim your zip back. Now, of course, if you stapled this, then just make sure that your scissors and your machine is nowhere near those staples. So that's what it looks like. But now what you need to do is to bring your two right sides together and your two lining pieces together. And you're making like a sort of a sandwich, really. So your line, let me show you this way. So your two right sides are going to be pushed together. Now we need to leave a turning gap, but we also need to make sure this zip is open. So let's just open that up. Just be careful it doesn't come off the end again. So we're going to start about 2 inches in and go all the way around, up and 2 inches in from this corner. I better take my zipper foot off. Don't need that anymore. Regular foot back on, or 1/4 inch foot if you've got one. So again, 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitch. Just make sure your edges match. And then just come down. Now your zip will either go, as you come up to your zip, it'll either go towards the lining or towards the outer. I always push it towards the lining and fold it there. And once you get to that, you'll understand what I mean by that. Be careful as you go over your zip. There's a lot of layers. So you might want to hand crank that. Depends on your machine. And then just come down the other side. Try and keep all your edges lined up. And this side. All the way along. So whatever you did this side, make sure you do that side. So I'm pushing that towards the lining. It kind of pleats itself, it folds back on itself a bit. And again, just be careful as you go over that zip, because you're going over kind of like the zip folded, so it's all those layers. And if you're not sure, stop, regroup, get some quilting clips and clip it together. So we're just at the top corner now. I'm going about 2 inches along. So you can trim these corners off, by the way, but I'm just going to sort of go for it now. If you haven't opened your zip, you're going to struggle here. So don't forget to open your zip. Push it through. We'll use our flat point of the scissors again. So I'm going to go in there between the lining, you know, the hole we left, the turning gap. I'm going through that into the main part of the bag. So actually, once you've learnt this, you'll be able to make pouches all day long, pencil cases, makeup bags. How fabulous. You can go in mass production. So again, just turn all this out. What we want to do before we completely get it really nice and neat is, remember the turning gap? I'm literally going to top stitch it closed. So bring those 1/4 inch over. You might want to iron this. You might want to use some quilting tape just to hold that together. I'm going to stitch about 1/8 of an inch from those folds. Let's just get that straight this side. There we go. That's it. Straight across. Don't forget to backstitch. Trim those threads. Mind you, nobody's going to see this. But that's no excuse, we should still trim. Okay, good, all done. So pop your lining in, just push that zip out there. So again, use your pokey tool, chopsticks, a knitting needle, a nice big knitting needle, size 8. That's what I usually use at home. So just get that lined up. And you really want to work at getting those corners out, just so it looks nicely presented. There we go, that's lovely. Give it a bit of a wriggle. Probably want to give it a press actually. And there we are, there's our pouch made. So all we need to do is stitch it onto our wallet. So I'll close it up. There we go. So that gets stitched onto the it's right in the centre. Remember when we die cut this and we had that central line going through the fabric? Just lay that just on the other side of that so it doesn't interfere with this big pocket. So if I hold this up, there's your big pocket there. So that's where your pouch is going to go there. So we're literally going to top stitch from the top here down to the bottom. Just make sure it's lined up. So your top and bottom is kind of the same depth away from the raw edge. So you're just going to top stitch that. You can zigzag it if you want to. So I'm going to just quickly give this an iron so it lies flat. Everything benefits from a bit of a press. And if you want to, use your pins now to pin this in place. But I'm just going to eyeball this so we can get on. So now I'm just going to top stitch that in place. Now don't forget you're going through lots of layers again, so take it easy. Get those first couple of stitches in, back stitch, nice and strong, and then just follow it. So it's literally an eighth of an inch, not even that probably. Now you might want to measure and make sure that you are the same top and bottom, and you can have a look at overhead in just a second, see what I've done. Now obviously I've done this quickly for you to see, but you might want to measure and pin. Okay, let me get this lined up. Let's cut those threads. So don't forget to backstitch with this part. It's really important because this is going to take a little bit of pressure with you pulling the zip and making it putting all your bits in there and what have you. So if I just put this like that, so I want you to have a little look. So let's just bring that down. Right. So this is what I've done. You're going to poke your corners out a bit better than me. But look, I've top stitched from here. I've done a back stitch and I've gone all the way along up to the top and back stitched again. Make that really secure. That means that I can lift my little pouch up. I can get to my purse. I can put my money in there or my tickets or whatever it is. But it hasn't interfered with anything here. And when we bring that over, it hasn't interfered with my little pocket or my card holder. I can still get to everything. Okay, so that's really the majority of it done. And there's that big pocket there. So it's all lined beautifully. The next thing, there's one more thing we've got to do, and that's to do the tab that takes it from, it kind of holds the whole thing together. Let me show you on the one that we've made earlier. So that's the tab that I've got to do now, and that goes onto the front with a popper. Right, so we're going to stitch that together. Now we did this on the die cutting machine, so while I remember, I'm going to give it a press. I have to say the creases that the die cutting machine gives the fabric is absolutely ideal, because this is where we would put a popper in and it wants to be right in the centre. And if you've got a tiny little bit of a crease there, you can't go wrong. So right sides together, this fabric has already been stabilised. 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you're going from the corner of where the straight edge is. I'll show you when I'm done. And you're going all the way around the curve. So take your time. You might want to pivot your needle so you get a nice curve. Back stitch, because we're going to turn it through, so it needs to be nice and strong. And again, if you wanted to, clip into these curves here. So you could clip into this, take some of that bulk away, or use your pinking shears. They're, like I said before, they're ideal. So I'm just going to trim this down, just for quickness. Not too near the stitches. And again, you might want to top stitch this. So now all we're going to do is turn through. So you might find this a bit fiddly, but once you've got it started, and also if you've got some hemostats, then put your hemostats in there and pull it through. Grab the end of the tube, if you like, and pull it through. It's perfect for that. I think I can do this without. Once you get so far, you can then use your turning tool, your pokey tool, to actually push it out. So I'll use my scissors again. And then just push it. Be careful, because you've clipped into it or you've stitched, you've cut near your stitching, so be careful. You don't want to do it again, do you? And again, get that lovely curve going. Look at that, it's beautiful. Now I am going to just give that a quick iron. But can you see that tiny little crease going along there? That's brilliant, because that helps us put the popper on. So we'll give that a bit of a press. I'd probably steam these, I have to say. Dry iron is really good for when you're patchwork and quilting, but for bag making and things like that, a good steam sometimes is what you need. So there's our tab done. So you just need to find the middle of your wallet, and it goes, if you have a look at this one, it goes on the side where the purse is. So it goes there. And that just gets stitched into the seam allowance. So all I'm going to do is fold my wallet in half. There's a lot of fabric going on now. Fold it in half, give it a finger press, or cut a little V out. Okay, tiny, tiny little V, but I can see that. And that's where I'm going to line my tab up. Okay, so all I'm going to do is pop it on there. Now don't forget, when this is folded and it comes over, you want it so the stiffened side is on the outside, because that's the one that's going to get the most use. So when we look at this, you can kind of work it out that this is going to be the unstiffened side, the piece that doesn't have the stabiliser. This is the one that will. So if we use that as our guide, so let me just check. So that's my stabilised piece. So that's going to go on there, but I'm going to put it there, ready for stitching. So all we need to do now is actually stitch the whole thing together. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the turning gap on the side where the long pocket is. There is a reason for that. It's because I need to put a popper on the front of my wallet. And if I have my turning gap in there, it means I can get my tool in there to do that. So I'm going to take this out for the moment, because I'm going to start, let's move that out of the way. So I'm going to start on the side with a long pocket, bring the two pieces together. So this is my outer, and I'm going to start about here, go all the way around, put my tab in, and right back to here. A bit like we did when we did the purse, actually. So I mustn't forget to put my tab in. You could have pinned that, but don't forget to take your pin outs before you turn this. So 1/4 inch seam allowance again. Back stitch, because you're going to turn through. And because you've die cut all of this, these pieces are absolutely cut to perfection. With hand cutting, sometimes we don't get it quite right. So again, 1/4 inch seam allowance. Be aware of all your pockets, your tabs, your card holder, all those other bits and pieces that you've just spent lots of time stitching. Just make sure that they're well out of the way. Mustn't forget to put my tab in. Make sure I get it the right way round as well. So I'm going to pop it in there now. So I've sort of lined up where the V is that I cut to the centre of my tab. So let's just get the purse out of the way. And of course you can move all these things because the purse would have got in my way then. So just coming down now to the tab. So all of those layers are getting stitched together. You can hear it. So don't forget, mind your pockets. There we go, bring it all down together. You could do a back stitch on those corners just to make sure they're super strong. Use your needle down facility if you've got one. The Stitch Pro has that and it's absolutely perfect. So let's just get that purse out of the way again. It's quite bulky, that purse. I think it's going to be really useful. So let's just make sure our pocket's out of the way. Yep. And perfect. I'm going to do a back stitch there. And again, I'm just making sure my pocket's out of the way. So I need to leave at least 4 inches. Okay. So we can trim those corners away. So there's less bulk in our seams. So that's all 4 corners done. So that's what it looks like. So we're just going to turn through here. So you've got a lot going on. You've got pockets, you've got card holders, you've got a pouch, you've got another set of pockets, you've got a flap. So bear that all in mind when you're pushing this all through. And also if you've used wadding as well, that's extra dimension. I probably should have left my turning gap a bit wider. I think I said 4 inches and then did 3. So it's do as I say, not as I do. Something like that. Just pull it all through. Now, because you're pulling it through, if you're using cotton, it will get creased. So give it a press. Ooh. Get your scissors or your pokey tool, your chopstick, your knitting needle. Some people have really special tools. Gosh, there's a lot going on here. This is amazing. To just poke those corners out. And I know we haven't done any of the snap fasteners yet, but we don't need to because all of that can be done at the end. If you're using other things like magnetic closures, you've really got to do that before you get to this stage. Last corner. Is it? Or is that added? No, this one. I knew I'd only done 3. There we go. We'll give it a bit of a press as well. So don't forget, I've left that turning gap along the raw edge of the big pocket because of the popper. So we'll just give that a press. It's looking amazing. I'm really proud of this. I think you could do with the steam. I love it. Wonderful. Right, so all we've got left to do now is the poppers. And I'm going to put this flat so you can see it. So this is our turning gap. So obviously we need to fix that. But when we fold this over, isn't it gorgeous? So that's going to be folded there. We can top stitch that. Hand stitch it if you want to. That'll be nice and neat. And this is where our flap is going to come over our tab. So what we could do is we could mark that with a pen, or you could mark it with a pen, so we know where the popper's going to go. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. Let's say there. Ooh. So I'm going to bring my tool in. I could have done with a pen really. So I just need the tool and I need the bradawl just to make a hole. I've got my finger still on the bit. I'm going to test it again just to make sure. Bring it across. So about there. In fact, I could go through the tab and I could go through the bag as well, but I only want to go through that top layer. Don't go all the way through. So I'm just going to do this one first. That's it. And then make a hole there, so I know it's going to be there. Just so it's just through that top layer, not through your pocket. So I've got a nice hole there now. So we need a button on the front of the tab. Push that through. And then we need a stud on there. Give it a little squidge. Pop that into the dish. And squidge that. Now I always use 2 hands, but you don't have to. So there's the first part. So the second part, you need to put the button inside the bag, or inside the wallet. And then you need a socket. So we've done a stud on the actual tab and a socket on the main part of the wallet. So get the dish in place, the button in the dish, and give it a squidge. So that is that popper now in place. Let's just fold that. So that's going to come over and snap fast. Whoa, that looks amazing. I love it. Sorry. So the only other one we need to do is this one here. So we might as well just crack on and do it. So I'm going to put my bradawl in where I think it should go, about there. But you do a pen line, measure it. I'm pretty confident that's about the middle. And again, we only want to go through the pocket, so lift your flap away and put your bradawl just through the pocket. You can see that. So again, we're going to do the opposite this time. We're going to put the button on the back and we're going to put the socket on the front. There we go. Get the tool in. So that button sits in that silver dish in the tool. I'm sure you've done that before. Give it a squidge. And then on this one, oops, the button goes on the front. Push it through with your fingers. And then the stud goes on the back. And push it together because it almost already seals it. And then that button goes in that silver dish. And then give it a squidge. There we go. So there's our pocket with a flap. I love it. Pocket with a flap. You've got your card holders here. You've got your pouch here with a zip. You've done it. Big pocket there. And then a little pocket on the front. So I reckon your passport will go in there easily. We just need to top stitch that bit there and we're done. There we are. All done. That's the travel wallet.